Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Kyle Juice Michalski, Quinten Krzysko, Sonny Verma, and the one and only Ron Luce. Bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
And we are back. We are Bears on Tap. My name is Quinten Krzysko. You can find me on Twitter at BuckHisStats, and I am joined by Sonny Verma on Twitter at the Sonny V. Sonny, how are you doing this evening?
I've been better, Q. It's a shame that we keep having to do these shows, but I was wanting to ask you, I saw that the Bears are offering some loyalty points if you attend this game on Sunday. So I was wondering if we can incorporate that in some sort of way for the fact that we're continuing to do this podcast.
Continuing to watch every second of the game every week, and not stepping away from your TV or turn it off and be like, I'm done with this. But yeah, I think some loyalty points would be great. Like I don't know what the prizes would be, like maybe a free on tap t-shirt or something, but like we'll have to get Tony on the horn about this because I like the idea.
It's rough. It's one of those, it's a shame because not that we would ever do it, but if we spent like 5 minutes going through watching the first 5 minutes of every episode we've had all week, I can just imagine what the stills are of what our faces look like at the beginning of each episode. Probably like positive, smiley, excited, and then just gradually over the last 7-8 weeks, just slowly just getting down in the dumps. And now here we are already basically looking forward to 2025.
I like that idea. If I have a moment where I'm just like, I have nothing to do for the next 2 hours, I might just pull all those and turn it into a graphic and just, tag the Chicago Bears and be like, you see what you've done to us? You see what you've turned us into? But the whole idea here, right, was that the Bears are giving away, they have what they call season ticket holder points, which you can exchange for, little gifts, knickknacks, or items like holding the flag out on the field as the players run out and stuff like that. And they're literally saying, if you just go to the game, we will give you points.
Yeah. I mean, they should, offer up the opportunity to call the defense. It's not like our defense has been playing well at this point. It's like, maybe our next defensive coordinator's out there somewhere. It would be a very Bears way to find someone.
I love that one. That is a great idea. Yeah. Just or maybe up for the next preseason game, you get the chance to go on the headset.
I think I saw a stat that since week 7, we're 32nd in a variety of defensive categories. So it's why not? Let's make it fun. You know what? The title of this episode is Find Reasons to Watch this Bears game on Sunday. I would watch that knowing some regular Joe Schmo across the street who was tailgating 15 minutes before the game started, got called in and is now up in the booth.
Yeah, no, I would love that. I'd love it even more if you got one of the more analytical minds of Bears Twitter up there, just doing some crazy stuff. And it's it's going to be boom bust, but it would be funny. It would be fun to watch.
That's you, Q. Yeah. You're talking about yourself. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I need to get a copy of the playbook, obviously. but anyways, I mean, this is, you think about it from their standpoint, though. They haven't played a home game in almost a month here. Last time they were at home, the season ticket holders probably had more to believe in.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I didn't really think about that, but it's been a rough stretch. And obviously we've struggled, in particular, being away from home. Although now we're kind of at the point where we struggle everywhere. But yeah, I'm very interested in seeing, the reason that went viral today is obviously, I'm assuming that, they're not expecting a great turnout. So they're trying to incentivize and the game's going to be on TV, obviously, so you want to maximize just how good it looks. I don't know what the weather's going to be like in Chicago, which you're going to tell me very shortly, I'm sure. But it's it's all hands on deck. Try to get as many people in the stands, and yeah.
I was just wondering how cheap tickets are getting, because I remember like years ago, December games in Chicago. I want to say, in my mind, I'm thinking like 2017 or maybe it was 2016. I just remember being in Chicago on a Sunday and thinking, I wonder how much Bears tickets are right now. I went and looked them up. This was like hours before the game. It was like $30 place, but like right now, the cheapest ticket in the house is $130, which
really
partially is probably being driven up by Lions fans. I bet you fell out. And it might not be a lot of Bears fans because, Detroit to Chicago, that's an easy trip.
Yeah.
Lions fans are traveling extremely well this year for their team. Like, I would bet you we see a lot of Honolulu blue in those stands this weekend.
So sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It's brutal. But, we're here. We're getting ready for the Lions game. Second time these two teams are facing off this year. Last time, Bears lost by 3. And honestly, all the ways that they have lost this year are like merging into each other in my mind. I'm like, I have a hard time remembering how they lost to the Packers versus the Lions versus the first Vikings game, because they were all so heartbreakingly close. And it was just like, now that once I started talking about it, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, this is the one where Matt Eberflus forgot to call the timeout, and they ended the game down by 3 with a timeout in the pocket and running 30 seconds off the clock. This isn't the one where they had the field goal blocked, or the one where they went to overtime and Caleb took the sack. Like that, but it's so sad that it's in my brain. I'm having such a hard time differentiating the 3 because they were back to back to back,
back to back heartbreaks, but yet we would do anything just to get back to that level. At least the games were competing, like, they were fun to watch. You're on edge and just waiting to make a play. Of course, at the end, we never did make that play, but it's much better than right now where the game is over, 6 minutes after kickoff.
Yeah, you hope that they can give us something a little closer to what we saw then, not since the Thomas Brown regime took over. But last time they played, Caleb had 256 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, but took 5 sacks. And the Bears never got anything going on the ground. They had, 78 rushing yards, I believe that is. 78 rushing yards on only 15 rush attempts. They just didn't even really try to run the football very well. But you had DJ Moore going off for 97 yards. Keenan Allen caught 2 touchdowns with 73 yards. They were able to move the football well against these guys last time. So it'll be interesting to see what's changed here. Because I've heard some complaints about Thomas Brown since he became head coach, that like they're not running the football. Their running the football had decreased when he became OC, but it's decreased even more since then. But like in this Lions game, they didn't try to run the football. So I'm curious to see how it plays out, how they attack stuff. But as you mentioned, we should get into the weather out there, because it will be at Soldier Field. It will be an outdoors game. And by golly, it's late December in Chicago. That means we have some weather. So it's looking like Sunday, 31 degrees, no real chance of precipitation, but there's going to be some wind, about 12 miles an hour. So nothing out of the ordinary for the lakefront, but really it's just going to be kind of cold at 31 degrees, not blisteringly cold, but it will be on the colder side, which bodes well when you're playing against Jared Goff historically.
Yeah, very true. Detroit's a cold city, but they got that dome covering them. So, yeah, I mean, for me, I wouldn't mind seeing snow, just because, again, it's just another thing to kind of enjoy watching, just football in the snow. Again, I don't know if you guys can tell, we're about 10 minutes into this episode. There's not much to look forward to in this game, so I'm trying to find and reach as much as I can.
So there's an article that Gene Chamberlain put out for Sports Illustrated, where he detailed that in 12 games at below 40 degrees in his career, Goff has 11 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and a passer rating of 75. Only 6.3 yards per attempt, and that's against his career average of a 95 passer rating and 7.5 yards per attempt. So there is pretty clear evidence that Goff has struggled more in the cold. We'll see if Gervon Dexter's back out there. Maybe that will be a factor. Maybe the pass rush can get after them a little bit. I mean, I didn't catch the injury report today, so I don't recall. I'll actually pull it up right now as we're talking, because that seems pretty relevant to look at, because Gervon Dexter does mean a lot to the pass rush. I thought they did a decent job of scheming up some pass rush in this past game, but getting him back would be a big help to it. And he did not participate today with that knee injury, so that's still in question. Darrell Taylor was a full participant after going down late in that game against the Vikings. But as we're talking injuries, Sonny, this Detroit Lions roster has changed a fair amount since the last time we saw the Lions.
I was going to say that. You talking about the Jared Goff, not playing as well in such cold weather, that combined with the fact that this Lions team is missing quite a few pieces. And, they come off of I don't know if you call it a heartbreaking loss, but a tough loss to Buffalo last week. They're a team that they've had so much momentum all season long. I think I'm actually intrigued to see how Detroit handles this. Obviously, I'll just start off talking about the injury to David Montgomery. RIP to a bunch of fantasy teams out there who might be battling it out in the playoffs, who might have David on their fantasy teams. But more importantly, with the Detroit Lions, this is kind of one of their first real tests this season. Clearly they're the favorite to win on Sunday, but they're going to be in less than ideal conditions where their quarterback struggles a bit, and they're dealing with a lot of injuries. I do think this is kind of a good test for Dan Campbell, in the sense of if things go bad, is there going to be any sense of panic that comes over Detroit, or is he going to be able to keep the ship somewhat level?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be able to keep it somewhat level, but I just think they're more vulnerable. I mean, I think last year they were dealing with a ton of injuries down the stretch, and they still went and won 2 playoff games, and their defense faltered down the stretch because of some of those injuries, I believe. But it just becomes a lot harder of a thing to manage, to your point, that the defense that expects to be really good with the next man up mentality, but you're just talking about a lot less talent defensively now. Like when I'm looking at this, I just pulled up their injured reserve list, and they have 22 players on injured reserve right now. Like Alex Anzalone was their starting linebacker, and then Malcolm Rodriguez came in and became the starter. Both those guys are on IR now, so they're down to their number 3, number 4 linebacker in David Long there. Out at corner, they're relying on Terry and Arnold to be their number 1 cornerback now, because Carlton Davis just went down with an injury. He's on injured reserve now. So I like Terry and Arnold coming out of the draft, but I mean, he was a guy who needed some development, and he hasn't been stellar by any means this year. And then you're talking about Kindle Vildor being your starting outside corner across from him now. We know Kindle Vildor. We've seen what he can do. I like Kindle Vildor. I always got the feeling with him that if he was like an inch taller, he would be a really good corner, but he's just too small. He's just out of reach of so many plays because he's just a little too small. And that's kind of been the story of his career. And, Meek Robertson in the nickel has been an issue for them. He's not a nickel cornerback. I like Meek Robertson. Again, he's a really small cornerback. So he gets typecast into this nickel role, but he's not that good at the nickel role. He's 5'8", so that's why he gets typecast into there, but he's the much better outside corner. So you're talking about a really susceptible secondary, and the last guy that they lost who's big for them was a Lee McNeil, who is, I think, the best defensive tackle on this team, which is saying a lot when you have DJ Reader on your roster. Like, I think very highly of Lee McNeil. He went down the other week with a torn ACL after dealing with a concussion prior to it. Again, this Lions defense is susceptible right now. They're like, if the Bears aren't scoring some points and getting some yards against this defense, it's a pretty big red flag for, just what's going on within Hallis Hall right now.
Yeah, it's one of those. Actually, now I'm starting to remember when we did the preview for this Lions game. I think I had made a comment, hey, man, that's a lot of green, when we were looking at this exact graph. That green is gone now. Especially on the defensive side, I see lots of pink and even some red at this point. Truthfully, if we took the context out of the picture, I look at this graph that we're looking at on YouTube. All of a sudden I'm like, okay, maybe the Bears can pull it off this weekend. Again, this is not the team that's 12-2 this season, and so. Yeah, here we go. The cycle starts. The more we get into this episode, I'm like, I might be convincing myself that maybe we can pull this off at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's the typical Bears cycle, like you said, of we start out the week just way down in the dumps. By Wednesday, we're talking ourselves into, we can win this game. This is a winnable game, right? Like, we're right there.
Does that say 100% for Penei Sewell?
That's a good catch. I did not even catch that making this. Yes, he is in the 100th percentile of offensive tackles this year.
Wow.
That's what that's saying. So he is the number one offensive tackle in the NFL by a combination of PFF grades over the last 2 years and snap percentage this year. He's probably played every snap and been top 3 PFF grade both years. So yeah, that tracks to me. I mean, I think very highly of that man.
Yeah, no, that passes the eye test, but I just don't think I've ever seen 3 digits on this graph before. That's incredible.
I'm gonna throw something in the chat here about just do you think the Bears will cover? Do you think they'll cover plus 6.5, or are you taking the Lions minus 6.5? And we'll see. I just realized the other day on our live stream after talking to Tony, he's like, yeah, we can do poll questions in there and stuff, like when you're in the YouTube studio. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna throw that in there. But anyways, we're kind of tossing our typical schedule or game preview schedule. Like, we've talked about this team. You guys know this team. We don't need to do baddest man, nicest man. We're not even sure we want to watch this game as Bears fans. So, like, we're not going to sit here and placate with all the player previews and matchup stuff. We're actually adjusting from our 3 keys to the game that we do every week, because let's be honest, when you're scrolling Twitter or you're on Google searching Chicago Bears, you see an article that says the Bears 3 keys to victory against the Detroit Lions. What's your first thought?
Pray.
Yeah, they're not going to. I'm not going to read that. I'm not wasting my time on that.
Yeah.
So instead of that, we are giving our 3 reasons to watch this game. Sonny, you want to kick us off with your first reason to watch this game?
I think the better test is, can we reach 3 reasons to watch this game? I think that's the better exercise.
It's a challenge.
I'll go with the easy one, and that's just growth. Obviously Caleb is the main guy, at least for over the last few games this season. We want to see him continue to get better. Unfortunately, with the Bears on the skid that they're on, the national narrative against Caleb is just getting worse and worse, but I don't really think it's diehard Bears fans really saying it. And I'm not even saying it's a biased thing. I just think we've sat here and we've watched every single game. And sure, he has his flaws, and sure, there's some things that we wish he could improve on. But overall, I think, when it comes to purely Caleb, it's been a pretty successful season. And you want to see kind of how he reacts when there's nothing to play for. Like obviously now the season's over. We're going to finish in last place. Is he still going out there giving 110%? Moving forward, he's going to be taking on a leadership role on the Chicago Bears team, ideally. Otherwise, something went really, really wrong. And in some sort of way, like it might be starting on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the clear, most obvious reason to watch this game, and I'm with you on that. The growth, the young player growth, even to expand it from just Caleb, the growth of Rome Odunze, the Caleb Rome connection, I assume Braxton Jones is going to be back out there. If not, and if you tune into me and Ron's O-line show right after this, where we're live grading Karan Amagaji's game, the growth of Karan Amagaji from his first start to his second start, because as much as you might want to berate him, he's probably going to get better from his first game to his second game. And there's stuff that we're going to see that he will get better with if he is playing again. Or maybe that's Javon Dexter back out there, seeing maybe a little growth from him, or there's all sorts of areas that you can see. You can be looking for growth within the Bears roster, because they do have some youth littered throughout this roster, some young guys on rookie contracts. So you can say they got to get better. Did we see growth from Tyreek Stevenson last week? Mm-hmm. I mean, outside of just running his mouth, but I thought he made some nice plays in that game, aside from just the interception. I thought he had a nice pass breakup on top of that. And another one where, had he not interfered, probably would have been another interception, because he was right in position for it. But I think that has to be the top reason to watch this game. Now, moving into mine, and one of my ideas here was Rome Odunze growth. So I'm going to wipe that one out. But I'm going with Ben Johnson.
That was my. Oh, go ahead.
It sounds like I stole your second one, but Ben Johnson is I think he's a clear reason to watch this game. There's it feels like there's a very good chance Ben Johnson might be the Chicago Bears head coach next year. And we are now talking about him calling an offense without his bell cow running back.
True.
Right? Without David Montgomery. Jahmyr Gibbs is incredible. I love Jahmyr Gibbs. But Monty has been their bread and butter guy. That is the rhythm of their offense, is David Montgomery. Without him, it might be a little different. Seeing how he calls the game in that situation, I think, is something worth watching for when you're hoping this guy might be your head coach next year. But what were your thoughts on the Ben Johnson aspect, Sonny?
So, I mean, that was going to be my other point to this game. It was going to be coaching, and it was going to be two-part. Ben Johnson, obviously, as you were kind of alluding to, Ben is kind of dealing with some adversity now. All his A guys are not there anymore. So in some sort of ways, it's a preview for Bears fans to see how he adjusts to the personnel that he has on the field. And again, it's kind of exciting. You kind of said it yourself. I wouldn't say, it's moving in a positive direction as opposed to a negative one when it comes to a connection with Ben Johnson, possibly coaching the Bears next year. But actually, again, mine was a two-parter when it comes to coaching. I might be the only one left, and don't get me wrong, I'm not Thomas Brown. I still want to see if he's capable, after a couple of weeks, of just settling down and at least getting the offense to what it looked like just a couple of weeks ago. We kind of talked about this during the watch party. Thomas got promoted real quick. And, basically, like, he got a whole bunch of responsibilities thrown on him in a much faster pace than a traditional coach would have. And so for me, I've alluded to it. Like, I kind of, in some sort of alternate universe, I kind of wish Thomas had just stayed at the OC role and we could have continued to see the growth and the connection between him and Caleb. I'm not completely off the ship. I'm more so like, half deep into the water, but still holding on to the railing of the whole Thomas as head coach type of scenario, just to see if there's any sort of improvement as each week goes by. So for me, again, my other point was also going to be coaching, a two-parter. Ben Johnson, obviously, for the reasons that you and I both stated, but also a little bit on our side, just because I wanted to see if he at any point gets more comfortable with the way he runs the offense, and if it can start looking like what it looked like just a month ago.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's something to be said for that. Of like, he ain't dead, he ain't in the ground. He's got to be doing something all week at Hallis Hall. And I mentioned this briefly on the post game show last week, and it's a sad comment, right? Like, no one wants to compare themselves to the 2-15 2023 Carolina Panthers, but it was a dead season for them. They had nothing to win. They'd fired their head coach. Their new offensive coordinator was Thomas Brown. He didn't get the interim head coach role there. He was the interim offensive coordinator. But week 16 against the Green Bay Packers in Carolina, so a home game for the Panthers, they took the Green Bay Packers to the brink of their limit in a 30-33 shootout. Game before that, they won 9-7. Game before that, they lost 6-28. 2 games after that, they lost by a combined score of 0-35.
Okay.
But they had one game where they just went, okay, this is interesting. This is a little bit interesting. There's a reason to watch this. And so to your point, maybe there is something. Thomas Brown ain't dead.
He's not dead, and we know like he's listening. I've watched every single press conference of his. Like, the reporters make it very clear and bring it to his attention the struggles that this football team has in the first quarter, in the first half. And he's supposed to be the offensive guy on this team. So I'm very curious to see, just like how I mentioned Ben Johnson and how Ben Johnson's going to adjust with the difference in the personnel that he has on the field. I want to see what Thomas does. Hey, this game plan has not been working. Now let me try to figure something else out. I want to see if he's capable of doing that, or if we're going to see the same Bears team the previous 2 weeks where the formula just simply hasn't worked.
Yeah, and so I also want to mention to anyone viewing on YouTube, on X, on Facebook, let us know why you're going to watch this game, if you're going to watch it. Like, we are looking for valid reasons of why are you going to watch Bears against the Lions this Sunday. But last one, I think we're going to do a bit more of a brainstorm one. So I'm going to throw my idea out there, and we'll see what you think of it, see what the people in the comments think of it. But my first thought was, this is the first home game since November 24th. Long time to not play a home game, right? Three whole games ago. So last home game. This year, Bears are 3-3 at home. They're 4-1-1 against the spread at home. We've gone over 3 out of those 6 games. Now, if we expand that even to 2023, because it's a lot of the same roster, Bears are 8-6 at home in the last 2 years. 8-3-3 against the spread, and 8-6 on the overs. They've gone over 50% of the time in their home games the last 2 seasons. You might see them put up some points. It might be a fun game. Like there is some data that backs that. So that's my first thought. But Sight, did you have any other ideas on why you would watch this game?
The last one I had was, it's still a rivalry game, right? I mean, technically, it's still NFC North. We're still talking about the Detroit Lions, Chicago Bears. So I still enjoy that aspect. The Lions are on their way to potentially a Super Bowl run. And while there's one part of me, and probably, a lot of people won't like me saying this, a bigger part of me that probably prefers us to lose this game at this point just to continue getting that higher draft pick. It's still, with the victory here, I wouldn't be upset by any stretch, because I don't want Caleb to lose his last, 11 games of the season in a row or something like that. And again, you're beating a division rival, and it's always nice to beat a division rival.
Along those same lines, I think this might win out, just because it's going to be great in the article of the rivalry aspect. Scott says, my boss is a Lions fan, and I'm holding out hope I can talk shit to him on Monday.
Exactly. We're all hearing it, right? We all know Lions fans in our life. And, for the most part, they've never been able to celebrate the way that they've been, celebrating all season long. And obviously, they were so close last year. And it's just one of those things. If somehow this Bears team could steal one from Detroit, it's just, one little feather in our cap that we can have and remind them in future group chats and remind Scott's boss that, congrats, but we did beat you.
If the Lions go on to win the Super Bowl and the Bears beat the Lions, ipso facto, the Bears are Super Bowl champs.
That's literally science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are a show about math and science. Like,
right.
That is a fact. But Sonny, we're keeping this one a little shorter. What's your prediction for this game?
Man, I want to be hopeful. I really do. I just want to watch the Bears compete in the first half, right? Like, we decided to do a watch party in the last game, and by the time I signed on, it was almost already 10-0, right? And that was only a couple minutes after kickoff. I just want to see a competitive game. I want to see Thomas make some adjustments. Like, let me see if you're capable of doing something different. I don't think he is. I think this game might end up being pretty close, but Detroit playing very conservative just because they can't risk losing any more guys and having that graph of yours get even pinker and even redder for games that are actually going to matter down the road. So I'll say 21-10 Detroit.
Okay. And to your point, I just got curious. When was the last time the Bears did score a first half point? The Bears' last first half point came in the first quarter against the Vikings in their last home game. So they just managed to go a entire road trip, 3-game road trip without scoring a first half point. That's something. But I'm sorry, what was the final score prediction that you had?
I'm going with 21-10. And again, it's just one of those where I don't think the team that they're putting on the field on Sunday isn't the Detroit that we saw a few weeks ago, but I think they're going to play very conservative. If they get a lead, they're going to try to just milk that clock and get to the 60-minute mark so that they can move on and have another week to get their players healthy.
Yeah, I think that's a fair one. And truly, I mean, this game, that kind of goes along the lines of, I'm thinking, if this goes badly, it's going to remind me of the 2022 game against Buffalo in Chicago, where it was just like Buffalo won that game. I want to say it was something like 16-3 or something like that. Like, it was super, super ugly. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, no, it was 35-13. Okay. They scored more points than I must have blacked that out. But that's the worst case in my mind of like a team that's just completely overmatched. But for me, I'm going with, I think my model here says 28-17 is the projection here. Let's see. It projects the Bears to be 10.5-point dogs, total of 46 points. So that ends up at roughly 28-17. I'm going to bump that up a little bit, though, because Lions, it was what? Last week it was, I want to say, almost 90 total points scored in that game against Buffalo, which, again, it's Buffalo. They're really good. But yeah, it was 90 on the dot, 90 total points in Detroit's loss against Buffalo last week. 2 weeks ago, 65 total points. I think their defense is really vulnerable right now. I have a hard time saying the Bears will score less than 20. So I'm going to go Lions 31, Bears 20.
Q, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Which game script would you rather see? Bears win a very ugly game. Detroit just can't go over its injuries, get over and let's say the final score, Bears win 16-13. Offense doesn't look that great. Caleb makes mistakes. Just a game that we barely just squeezed by an obviously hurt Detroit Lions team, or Bears lose 41-31, but we kind of see the Bears offense the way it looked like a month ago. The offense looks great. The defense looks as awful as it's been looking since week 7 or week 8, but it looks like they're starting to kind of gel, at least on the offensive side. We've seen the adjustments from Brown, and the offense, we come away thinking positive of the offense. But overall, the game's a loss.
So the upside of the first one is that the whole team gets a win. Everyone gets the monkey off their back. And, maybe you see some progress from there the rest of the season. The upside in the second is that maybe the offense gets rolling a little bit more. That's a tough decision. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going with the win.
Really?
Because I think the win has more lasting effects for the whole team over the final 3 games, which also includes probably the offense figuring some stuff out. Whereas a loss where the offense makes some stuff work feels more like a 1-week thing to me.
I still think I'm leaning towards the second option, and it's only because maybe this is just purely selfish, but it still bothers me when, all this Caleb talk that's been happening on all the national shows and whatnot. For me, it's more important that I want to see Caleb look good. I want to see Rome look good. I want to see that offense playing like it did a month ago. And it comes with the added benefit that we lose, hopefully some of the teams ahead of us, or at least below us when it comes to, the draft rankings. Maybe we can move up a spot or 2 at some point. But this was hard for me. And that's why I created the scenario, because I agree with you. I do think this team needs to win at least one more before the season's over, because otherwise, the mood is going to be down. Like, it's down now, but at least we have, air quotes, another game to look forward to next week. If we lose, what is it going to be, like 13 straight or something like that, or 10 straight, and carry that over to the off season, imagine what that mood's going to be like.
Yeah, you hear it all the time from former players, from current players, from people around the teams. It is so hard to get better when you're losing. It is so hard to go in that facility. And yeah, sure, you'd rather be crying into your millions of dollars than crying into nothing. But it, from the human aspect, it's hard to keep going and putting work at something and just keep banging your head against the wall, against the proverbial wall, when you're not seeing any results. And so I think the chances of the offense figuring stuff out, not even figuring stuff out, making stuff work over the final few games, I feel like a win goes a long way towards that. And ultimately, we're probably talking a draw between the 2 options, because maybe in the loss they figure stuff out and that carries over some. I just think the ability for those guys to go into Hallis Hall on Monday and take what happened on the field and grow from it improves with a win.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I would not be upset if we win this game in any sort of way, of course. But I guess I'm just saying, I'm just hoping that even in a loss, if that's what happens, to me, the key is just let's see some positive momentum on the offensive side of the football. The defensive side, I'll be honest, for me, defense might look very different next year. Right? So it means a little less for me moving forward for the rest of the season. But to me, Caleb, Rome, maybe even a Cole Kmet, those type of guys, I want to see them at least have a little bounce back to give me something to look forward to next year.
Yeah, and the idea of winning one just has to bring me to this. It's that would be it would just be nice to win one, that's just where I'm at. It would be nice. I think that happened a few years ago. They beat someone late in the year, and it was just it's just nice to win. I'm done. I'm done tanking. Tank mentality. We have the quarterback. I just want to see a win. But Sonny, any final thoughts or I guess we already did final thoughts.
Yeah.
So what do you say we get out of here the only way we know how?
Yeah, absolutely. Bear down, Q.
Bear down.